Hello, my teacher friends. This is Christina Whitlock here, your host and self-appointed anytime piano teacher friend. Thanks for joining me for the Beyond Measure podcast today. We are wrapping up our series today on the 21st century obsession with the fast track. In all honesty, I had planned on recording a very different episode for today to finish this series, but through a random series of events, I ended up recording a conversation with Nicola Cantan instead. And I just happen to think this is the perfect conclusion for a series that has been a little heavy to write, a little time consuming, and what a breath of fresh air to simply talk through some of these ideas with a brilliant thought partner like Nicola Cantan. Nicola Cantan is the mastermind behind the Vibrant Music Teaching Empire, as well as the Vivid Practice app. She has made a few appearances here on Beyond Measure before, so you're welcome to check out episodes 128 as well as 171 to hear more from her on that. Of course, you can also head to vibrantmusicteaching.com to learn all about what she's up to in her community and otherwise. If today's episode leaves you wanting more, I have great news for you because there is more. Today's conversation also has a bonus counterpart that you can find in the Beyond Measure Patreon community. So for just $6 as of the time of this recording, you will have access to a bonus conversation with some very candid thoughts from Nicola Cantan and I. So head to christinawhitlock.com/community to learn more about how to get access to that conversation and help support this show. It's the ultimate win-win. And now, friends, let's get on with the show. It's Nicola Cantan. I have been running this series on the podcast over the last few weeks about this obsession we have with fast tracking everything. And last week's episode spawned a DM conversation between the two of us. And I was like, oh my gosh, we should just record this. So we're taking our conversation to the mic today. And I have no idea where this is going to go, but let's do it.
Yes. Well, yeah, they've been extra good episodes recently.
Well, thank you. It has been heavy writing because I talked about coaching programs and I talked about AI and all this stuff. And it's been like, this is not my usual brand of fun. So I had a plan to wrap this series up with a certain topic, but now I'm thinking maybe we'll just wrap with this conversation if it's any good. So we'll see.
Pressure.
The pressure is on. Be brilliant, both of us. Here we go. I'm just kidding. So you messaged me and you were like, oh my gosh, I think about this all the time. Do you want to kick that off?
Sure. So what came up for me instantly was, so many branching off topics. Like you gave a few examples in the episode and my mind just went like in every direction. Like this is showing up everywhere. Mm-hmm. And it's so crucial for so many teachers to actually decide which things you want to fast track and which things you don't, right? And like make a conscious decision about that. But if we can get inside this topic, we understand better where the next generations are coming from because more and more of this influence is weighing down on them of like, you have to go harder, faster, better, stronger all the time.
All the time.
All the time. And then they're coming to piano with that baggage. So I think it's useful to understand from that perspective too.
Absolutely. Like I just scrolled past something this morning and it's one of those things that on the surface you're like, oh yeah, that's cool. And then you're like, wait a minute. And it was like, this is the secret to life. Decide what's essential and then let everything else go. And it's like, okay, that seems like good advice. Focus on what matters, perspective. But it's like, we can't essentialize everything in our life. Like we're constantly optimizing and we're feeling like every second of time matters. We're missing our actual lives, right? I remember very clearly being in grad school, and I was reading this book written from kind of a Christian woman's perspective. And basically, and this is very common in that field of writing, where she was like, when I put my head on the pillow at night, I need to know I used every second of my day to its fullest. And that's how I sleep well at night. And I remember reading that thinking like, yes, that is my goal. I am going to work every moment of my day so that I can sleep well at night, knowing I did my best with these 24 hours I've been given. And oh my gosh, is that a load of baloney? That is not the move, guys.
It's so funny because I was thinking about a very similar message, but not from the same context the other day. So for fans of The Office, if you're not a fan of The Office, just bear with me for a second. There's this episode in a later series, right, where the company has been bought over and there's a new CEO, Joe, and she's in the office, and it's St. Patrick's Day, which is why it stands out to me, is like the whole thing is it's around Paddy's Day. But she is working, and the rest of the employees feel like they can't leave the office because like they have to show face that they're still there. And she says to Michael, the boss, the manager of the office, he's saying, I think we should go now. And she says, if you think you can hang your hat on today and be proud of what you did, something like that. And that's what it brought to mind for me. It's like, okay, we don't have to hang our hat on every day. Like, yes, we want to get some stuff done. I hope I get some things done, but also I actually want to enjoy every day too. So could we make that the target maybe? Or like, it's just...
That, it's wild because I actually had another Office reference I was going to make. But it's not that one, but that's really funny. When you started talking about The Office, I was like, oh my gosh, she's going to say the thing I've been thinking. Okay. But that's a really good one. So, that actually ties into what we were DMing about on Instagram really well, because you have a thing about audiobooks, right? Tell us your thing about audiobooks.
So this is what I immediately thought of when you were talking about using ChatGPT for writing, is what you were really talking about, and how you don't want to shortcut that time because you actually enjoy writing and you think it's good for you, and etc. And I totally agree with that. But I immediately thought of this audiobook argument. I can't even call it an argument because I haven't had it with anyone. But in my head, I've been having this argument.
Yes. No. Right now, I can play bad cop here. We can argue this out.
No, but like a lot of, especially in like business advice areas, right? So buddies I would have in different industries and different things like that, they're pretty dogmatic about listening to audiobooks on at least 1.5, maybe 2x. If it's beyond 2x, they're going to brag about it. It's like a badge of honor.
Yeah.
And I've always been like, okay, to what end? Mm-hmm. Like, what is this? Is someone giving you $100 for finishing this number of books in a year?
Yes.
You have to be more than 100 to incentivize me to listen to that stupid sped up audio. But I know people will come back at me and say, oh, you get used to it. I've gotten used to it. Like, I've listened to books at that speed because they've been books that I have to read and I'm not enjoying, right?
Yes,
and if they're in that category, fair enough. But people are doing this with all their books. And what's the point? Like, I don't get it. A book is something you're supposed to be enjoying.
Yes.
And at the very essential level, if you listen on 2x, aren't you just burning through your book budget? Like, so quickly. You're spending so much money on these books and you're not enjoying any of them. You're just flying through them and checking them off the list.
Oh, that's such a good point. Okay, that kind of could spin off in a whole other way, couldn't it? No, that's the thing. It's like, I feel like we're in such a mindset of maximizing our time. We rush through the things that we actually want to savor and enjoy. And I'm that way. I've shared with you, I'm that way with podcasts. Like, I like to know how someone speaks. And I can't even imagine if anyone listens to me on 1.5x, Yes, let me know, because I'm pretty sure I sound like a maniac. There are so many things that we're so worried about trying to get through. Like, I used to play in this card club it was very multi-generational. We would play once a month. It was the highlight of my month because, I've got young kids at home and adult conversation is really special to me. And I would look forward to it. And when I would talk to people, they'd be like, oh, we have card club this week. And I was like, but this is the stuff of life, right? Like, this is the connection and the fun and the laughter. And we always had a great time. I was like, stop dreading it. Stop feeling like something on the calendar is a bad thing.
Or not even dreading it,
right.
But talking as if you do. Like, we can get in these habits of just like things we say because that's what you say. Like, people do it with the word busy. Oh, how are you? Oh, busy, busy. Yeah, I'm sure you are busy, but like, is that really what they were asking? No, and it doesn't give them any answer. So
that's so true.
Like, we get in these habits of just saying these things. A friend of mine, her mom, she had this discussion with her mom to try and get her to stop saying this. So she likes to do things early in the morning. She's just a morning person. So if she has something like an errand to run or whatever, she'll do it quite early. But she says it as, oh, I'll just do it right away and then I'll get it over with. No matter what it is. Like, it could be something very enjoyable.
Yes.
And it's that idea. It's just like, oh, this is my excuse for doing it that way or something. But you're communicating that to yourself as well if you say it out loud.
100%. Let's stop rushing through the things that we actually want to do. That brings me to my office quote. So if you know the series, there's this character named Andy Bernard, and he leaves and he makes this comment about how I wish they would tell you that the good old days were happening right now. The things that we feel busy with through our day, those are our memories. That is exactly what we're going to reflect back on. I started off this year reading the book 4,000 Weeks by Oliver Berkman. I don't know if you've read that or not, but
I haven't. I've heard of it. I haven't read it yet.
It's so good, Nicola. It's so good. So 4,000 weeks is the average human life. You get 4,000 weeks. And so that sounds like it's in this culture of, okay, you got to make the most of your 4,000 weeks and let's hurry, go, go, go. And it's not that at all. In fact, his biggest premise is that you are not going to get everything done that you want to get done, which speaks to me. And I think people like you as well, who's just a constant flood of ideas and a constant flood of ambition. And one of the things he talks about is attention. We're taught that attention is this kind of, thing that we have control over, or, it's a, like something that's outside of ourselves, and we have to control where we put our attention. But really, our attention is just us. It's my kind of book because it's just all this thinking business. It's not like necessarily here's how we solve anything, but but here's the reality of what life is. Our everyday life is what our life is.
Exactly. Yes.
So,
it's one of those things that, like, it sounds like a silly sentence, and then you actually think about it and then you're like, oh yeah, that's actually profound. This is it. Like, that's what it is.
This is it.
This is it, guys. No, but seriously, like, if we're rushing through everything, like I said at the start, if there's some things that you hate and you want to rush through, okay, I get it. Like, you make them palatable in some way, or you make them go faster.
Yes.
I totally get that. But if we're putting everything in that category, which is what is happening,
yes.
I mean, what are we left with?
Exactly. We're saving all this time so we can do what? Like, I shared something on Instagram a couple weeks ago. This is hard to describe in audio, but like people who type the letter U instead of writing out the word you. I was like, I wonder what all those people do with all the time they're saving. I kind of laughed about it when I shared it. And now that I've been doing the series, I'm like, you know what? That's kind of the whole thing, right? We're trying to shorthand our way through our lives so we can get to what? I don't know. Because none of us are like out there enjoying our lives like never before.
Just trying to do all the things as well. Like, I think the two things go together, right? All these shortcuts. Are they because everyone's trying to do all the things, or are they why everyone's trying to do all the things? I don't know.
Absolutely. Last week when I was talking about AI, I was saying I like the writing process. I don't want to fast track that. And I do realize that not everyone is that way. There are aspects of the writing that a lot of people don't enjoy. So this is not me judging that. But I am curious. Can you think of something that you do like to fast track? Like, is there something that you could pinpoint?
I mean, the obvious example, since this came out of AI,
Uh-huh.
is that. So there are some things that I use AI
Mm-hmm.
for now,
Mm-hmm.
and it is writing, but it's the writing I never enjoyed and no one really looks at. So there's a lot of things in my business that just need a little chunk of text for
Yeah.
whatever reason. Like, it's not something that is a focus. It's not an Instagram post or a blog post. I would never write those with AI. It's like the little description-y things and stuff that go in all these spots on websites and stuff like that. Boring things that nobody needs to know if they don't need to know it.
Yeah.
But that's something I will fast track, and I'm consciously making that decision. I hate doing these because it feels so pointless. It feels like a waste of my time because
Yeah.
no one's going to read it, but the SEO bot needs it to be there or whatever. So that's an example of something I do actually fast track.
That's actually a really good one. Someone messaged me this last week about, she said, well, I needed a new photo release for my students. And instead of sitting here and trying to put words together, I just had ChatGPT crank me out a photo release. And that's like, okay, that's fine. You're probably not going to come to any profound mental realizations while you're writing your student photo release.
Yes.
So
Yeah,
totally
exactly.
fine.
But I am worried about how much it's expanding. Because as you pointed out, that writing time has made you, right? It's made you think about things and take these twists and turns. And I'm not really worried about that for the teachers listening because they've already done some of that before AI arrived. But we're setting an example, right? And if it becomes the norm that we just use ChatGPT to write this thing because it's easier, then everything is written by them. So there's no original content out there beyond a certain year.
Exactly.
So that's one side of the concern. And the other side is children aren't learning to think. We already know that's a problem. They're not learning to stick with things and to think through things and to struggle a bit. And it's getting worse.
It is. I used to launch on this at the start of any collegiate course I've ever taught. I tell students right away, I'm like, look, my belief is that you are in higher education to learn to be a better thinker. That to me is the priority. Like that's why university became a thing in the first place, was to go and think and challenge yourself and learn the process of learning and the process of forming ideas. And so I'm not going to sit here and spoon feed you. And it's a struggle for some because really students, and I'm talking young adults in that situation, but we all see it in our studios with students of every age. They want, I do this step and I do this step and I do this step and I check it all off and say, I did the thing. But yeah, that's not my brand. I want to mull everything over in my brain and I want everybody else to do the same.
Yeah. But it's, I mean, and this is a much bigger question than we can solve, as amazing as we are. But it's this whole idea, like, which has been since the dawn of school, I presume, of like when students would copy each other or whatever, when a phrase a teacher would say is, you're only cheating yourself, right? But it's happening on this mass scale now. If you get the AI to do the work, yeah, AI is getting better. The teacher isn't going to find out. But you are literally cheating yourself, and it's impossible to convince a young person of that. So
Absolutely.
that's where I don't know how that problem is solved, but they're not going to learn to think.
I tell my kids this just on loop. I don't care about your grades. And that's a hard thing because I do actually care about their grades, but I really am trying to present this cool, chill front that I don't care about the grades. I really do want them to learn the material. So if you get a bad test grade, that's fine, but let's figure out why you didn't understand that question or whatever. And as long as we're learning, then I'm fine. But that expectation is really baked in. Like, okay, just let me get through this class and get an A. I just want to get my A and leave. And that's another thing that I see with university students all the time as well. But we see it in our studios. Like, kids just want the A. What do I got to do? And it's not just that. It's so much more.
But it's all connected. It's all the way through. You know, that whole, dare I say it, kind of American work culture.
It is. It's
like
very American.
It's definitely all over the world now. But you know, it's quintessentially American in my mind.
Yeah, blame us. It's okay.
I don't mean to blame you. But it is stronger there because I talk to teachers all over the world, and this sense of you have to hustle like that. So that all comes through like, oh, you just have to get the A in the class because then you have to check that box off. And that's the same with work. You just have to get through all of the stuff.
Yeah.
Just to be able to say that you not only that you worked this hard and you also prepared all your meals from scratch and you also, like it just goes on and on and on. There's all these boxes to check. And that's why you rush through them because it's impossible.
Yeah. Well, that's the heartbeat of my life's struggle is that I've tried to validate myself through what I do and prove that I have value to offer the world and all of those things. That's stuff I've gone many rounds about in my brain because at the end of the day, we're not here to be productive.
But it's the productivity part that I have the biggest problem with. Yeah. Because people who I haven't met, they'll come up to me in conferences and things and ask me about productivity.
I was going to spin this conversation, just let you tell us all the things, Nicola. How do you do it? I'm just kidding. I'm sure you hear that all the time because you do. You are a person with great capacity. And I do assume you're great at figuring out a system and putting systems in place. Yeah, because you do accomplish a lot.
Sure. I like the word systems. I love a system. Yeah. So I've no problem with that. And my brain is just very naturally systematized and that's just how it works. So that's part of where that comes from. But the productivity part, it's just back to the root word, product, right?
Yeah.
What are you producing? What is the product at the end? Yeah. Whereas the productivity focuses on the process of creating the product, but not what the product even is.
Have you stumbled upon all this? I feel like I read several books last year that all centered around the changes that came out of America, during the Industrial Revolution. That's really where productivity culture stemmed from, right? That all of a sudden, our hours were accounted for. You went to factory work and you were expected to crank out as much as you could within this hour. And it's amazing how that sparked so much of what we see in our world today. It's just because we moved from getting a job done to a time frame of, okay, how much can you get done in this amount of time? And that's where this obsession with efficiency started, right? And when we think about things like AI, I think what worries me is that you get a lot of people that are look, it can't figure out hands, AI art can't figure out hands. It's never going to be the same. But actually, it's going to get better. It's going to get a lot better. And as that happens, it's well, what era are we ushering into our lives? Because I do think we're going to look back in history and see this as the Industrial Revolution, a whole new culture that's building. So I don't know. Yeah. I don't know.
The factory thing is fascinating to me because I studied fashion in college. So right. That whole history is very relevant and something we studied. And then even looking at the likes of Ford and things, because that influenced then the fashion industry. And I think we can agree that in most areas, fast fashion is not the direction we should aim for.
Yes.
Right? Let's not become the fast fashion of anything. Let's, in fact, abolish the fast fashion movement and just undo all of that. But it also makes me think of the beginning of the internet, because this is where we have power, right? So back when the internet first existed, the World Wide Web, right? There were various versions of it.
Yeah.
And most of them were paid. They were some kind of subscription or something you paid for.
Yes.
And we voted with our eyes for the unpaid version, which means that we voted for advertising.
Yes.
That's what we decided. We didn't know we were making a decision. We didn't think about it because, of course, we didn't. We had no idea what was going on. But that's what we did. And that's how we have ended up where we have ended up, where advertising is the king of everything. Right now, we're at the beginning of AI.
Yeah.
So if I can have a big grandiose call to action, it is the things that you ask AI to do, that's your vote for what it should do.
Yes.
If we ask it to do the creative jobs, the AI company is going to invest in making it better at doing creative jobs. And we don't want it to take our creative jobs.
No, I know.
So as fun as it is to go, oh, make me an image of a person and it has 5 hands. And yeah, that's funny. I get it. I've done it too. But on a grander scale, we should be asking it to do things that we don't think humans should have to do.
Right. I have said that from the get-go, that people don't realize that they're training it, that everything we ask it is what it's going to evolve to do better. And I don't think people think about that as they're using it. And so, yeah.
It's just a fun, shiny new tool. You don't think about the fact that you're training it, and that you don't think about the fact that you are shaping the industry, because the industry is in its infancy. So you're deciding which way it goes.
I hope we have helped usher in a level of consciousness and thought, embracing the thinking process today. I really appreciate your hanging out with me and having this conversation, Nicola. You're one of my favorite thought partners on planet Earth. So thanks for joining me.
Well, ditto, and it was a pleasure. Thanks, Christina.
Whew, wasn't that such a good conversation? And if it felt like it ended a bit abruptly, that's only because it did. Remember, the second half of today's conversation is available in the Patreon community for just $6 to access that, as well as conversations with all of the guests that appeared on this show during my Summertime Conversation series. As if that wasn't enough, you guys, there are 23 hours of recorded conversations in our Teachers Teaching Teachers series over in the Patreon community. I've got to tell you, I am proud of every single one of those conversations. I'm so glad they exist, and every single one is a gem. I know that there is something in there for everyone. So again, feel free to head to christinawhitlock.com/community and get in on all of the learning and teacher friend fun. I know that I've been holding you over my usual 20-minute limit several times over the last few weeks, so I'm going to skip out on today's toast and teacher friend of the week. But don't worry, we'll be back next week with those things, as well as a solid episode on a surprising piece of advice when you need to get your name out in your community. I hope you'll join me next week, and in the meantime, onward and upward as we journey together towards really considering what matters most. Take great care of yourselves, my friends.